Good. So we're doing the introductory to sanding today, and we're going to touch a little bit on the different types of machines, where you would use them, how you'd use them, and pretty much what you're looking for to go. So, James, you want to start with something?
Sure. Why not? Well, I mean, look, so the bottom line for me is that currently, at least, basically, I'm doing primarily kitchen cabinet doors, which is in its own thing, I think, a bit of a law unto itself. In as much as it's it does almost restrict me a little bit in what I need and want to use to sand what I'm doing. And I actually don't find myself using sanding machines as much as potentially other people might do. But, at the same time, I would say that, there is definitely still a place for sanders, of course. It can speed up certain aspects of the job a lot. But there is also sort of an element of needing to be a little bit precise on certain things that sanders don't do. And sort of certain aspects of flattening that potentially other people might not be doing as much. But then, I guess the same could be said if you're a house painter or, whatever it is you're doing, specialized finishes or whatever. So, yeah, certainly for me, I'm using mainly a combination of 6-inch Festool or Merkur orbital and lots of blocking and soft pads, basically, for certain little things.
So you're using your DA sanders, your 6-inch, your 150s for pretty much the bulk of your stuff, and then you're going to come across and clean up your corners with your blocks, correct?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it depends on the stage of the job as well. Pretty much
where you're at standing.
Yeah, because I mean, for example, first prime versus second prime. First prime, and definitely not knocking that back with a sander as much, and often blocking that as opposed to sanding with a machine. So. And then just literally using soft pads and smaller blocks to get into corners, things like that. So it depends on the style of the door as well, to some extent. Flat doors we definitely treat a little bit more, a little differently to like shaker style, for example. So again, it really does depend on a few factors, but it is pretty much rotating between 6-inch sanders, blocks and soft pads. So
okay, yeah, I mean, different machines and different sanding techniques at different points in your sanding. I mean, you have pre-coat sanding, intermediate coat sanding, and your post-coat sanding. So obviously you're going to want to use different techniques at different spots to achieve what you're looking for. I mean, Cesar Ostos, he explains it great. When you're sanding, you should be sanding with a purpose. You shouldn't just be sanding to sand. What he means by that is every aspect of your sanding you should have a look for. So like you use your blocks as your intermediate primer sanding, and that's to keep your material on there so you're not removing too much so you can keep your build, correct?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so it's pretty much stopping burn throughs. You don't really want to be filling onto a bare surface like that. So, once you prime something and you're looking to make any sort of major repairs, the last thing you want to be doing is burning through with a sander. So you're definitely sanding with more of a purpose to be gentle and to sort of maintain integrity of what you've just put work into, as opposed to, for example, knocking back dodgy material or something on your first sand. So there is an element of just trying to be careful and sort of thinking really down the line what you're looking to do to each thing that you're sanding, because if it involves filler, you definitely don't want to be using fillers onto unstable bare surfaces. So it's kind of a bit of a bit of a juggling game, really, with keeping the primer on the surface enough that you can continue what you want to do without any interruptions or having to spot anything down the line, really, which is just time wasting, more drying time, things like that. So, yeah.
Makes complete sense. I agree with that. I mean, Robin, what are some of the sanding things that you've actually been doing lately? I know that you've been doing a lot of the renovations up there in Canada. You started a bunch of new projects as well.
Yeah.
And you have guys out there using a whole line of different sanders.
Yeah.
You got guys using this for that for the next thing. So what are some of the things that you're noticing with the different machines and where people technically should be using them?
Well, for one thing, any nail holes that we fill,
Mhm.
I block those by hand, 100%. I don't want a machine on those.
I'm the same.
So I send someone around, first person, to catch those. Then I send someone around with 5-inch, both the hybrid from Rupes and new to me Surf Prep 5-inch. Then I have another person come back and do all the little edges. Everything's basically shaker style. So the back edges, front edges, around windows, around doors, anything you're not going to get nicely with sander. But there's no squishy pads. Everything's.
And are you talking cabinetry or are you talking like house painting in essence?
It's everything. It's pretty much all the same because all the woodwork in the new houses are flat stock and pre-primed. So the primer's pretty nice, but you got to fill the holes and you got to fill them nicely. So that kind of thing, I'm really particular of using a block to do that, and we'll see how it goes for the rest of it. So I'm trying to use like everything I've got, but we went very fast. Like let's take it this way: 2,300-foot house. We pounded through caulking, sanding, filling the holes, priming twice, and one coat of finish in a day. So it's efficient. It's really efficient. So
especially the way you just explained it, where you guys have doing specific tasks and you have them following each other around. So I'll do a specific thing when I'm running houses, or a similar thing, I should say, when I'm running houses, where I'll have guys just do a specific task as far as whatever the prep is, and then I'll have somebody else follow right behind them doing a similar task, but to a different part.
Yeah, it's not as overwhelming, and people won't get lost as quickly. So if they have one task in one room, and don't leave that room until you're done, it's pretty efficient. And so far, like everything worked out really, really well. The sanders are new to me, these ones, because I was using Mirkas before. So far, really good.
What are some of the differences you're noticing across some of the sanders? Like, I mean, you just mentioned 3 big names right there. So
yeah. The difference is, I found them, as much as I like Mirka very much, and I have 8 of them. I find them a little bit awkward, and
what is that?
Hoses and stuff, and where the Surf Prep also uses hoses, it's not awkward, not at all.
That's the design, ergonomics behind it.
Ergonomics behind it is a very, very smooth machine, and then the Rupes is 2-handed, so that's more comfortable for some people. This experiment is actually really unique because the people that are using these sanders never sanded much with sanders before. They've never had a pneumatic sander in their hand in their life. So I'm getting really valuable feedback from people because they don't have a bias with a switch or a paddle or this sander, that sander, low profile, high profile. So it's really going to be interesting to hear what they have to say, rather than someone that, like myself, that definitely I have to have a paddle, So I'm getting a non-biased opinion, and then we'll also see results because the hybrid from Rupes is going back to back in different rooms with the Surf Prep. So we're gonna get some results out of this, that's for sure. But so far, everything's been really good and extremely time efficient, like the fastest I think I've ever seen. So
That's
and I'm
tremendous.
not busting them. Like I'm not breaking these guys' backsides to go fast. I'm like, let's just be, consistent and do a thorough job. And once we're done, then that's when I'm going to start to paint. And I'm telling you, it's really efficient.
No, it's tremendous. I mean, lately I've been doing just a lot of little stuff, but I've gotten that new Rupes, and to be honest with you, with the removal of the cords and the vacuum, if not needed, I mean, you can put the vacuum on it if you're doing something that's really dusty, but without the need of that, I've actually noticed that my sanding is a lot more efficient in the sense that I can go a lot faster without having to drag this vacuum around with me, having to worry about a cable or a cord. I work a lot on like 3-story homes with an open layout. So when I'm going in these houses, 10-foot floors. So as you're getting up to the 3rd floor, like you're dragging this vacuum, then you got to work your way back down. Instead of having to do that, I'm able to just go around with this thing. It's not gonna lie, it's not 100% efficient as it is with the vacuum on it, but it's good enough that I would feel comfortable in somebody's home that they're living in to be able to run it as as normal prep and paint.
Oh yeah.
I find it absolutely tremendous.
Anthony, sometimes if I have to sand something that's on the 2nd floor, 3rd floor that was forgotten, I may procrastinate on that if I know I have to hook up a vacuum, hook up an extension cord, drag my ass up there. Like I'll probably go for lunch and then come back.
You're not the only one. I might go sit in the truck for 10 minutes.
Yeah, so that part of it is super handy. Really, really, it's amazing. You can just pick up your sander and go. You don't have to. You're not tied down with all these. So that part's really good, and the sanders are great. So they're lightweight.
I haven't touched something as smooth. I mean, the more you build your pad, your interface, or and they even have the newer interfaces, the 7mm and the 12mm. One's a little stiffer, one's a little harder, obviously the 7, and then the 12 is a little more for your post coat sanding, where you're not really trying to pull your defects, but you're really trying to just clean and then polish. But as you start to build it with the pad, you'll realize that these sanders and their machines, they get more and more balanced. Whereas the other sanding companies out there, other manufacturers out there, I should say, as you put a pad on their machine, it may even become a little more unbalanced.
Yeah.
And that's because of the extra weight and the oscillation and things along those lines. So these are little things as to why you feel like I'm running this sander and it feels super smooth, like not powerful at all.
Yeah.
But as I'm using it, and then I go over to say use one of my other sanders or something from another company, I notice a lot of vibration and it feels way more powerful. Difference I notice is that I have to be on 5 in order to not get pad stall. Whereas with the Rupes, I'm on 3.
Yeah.
3.5.
I definitely turned down sanders from to 3, 4, 3.5. Like I definitely turned them down.
If you're sanding anywhere beyond 4 and you're getting pad stall, you may want to start thinking about other options. Just because there's other aspects to this, and maybe this is going to get a little too deep than where I really want to go with this conversation for the moment, but you're going to start creating surface tension with heat, and then you're going to start having other aspects happen to your coating. So with the more heat you have, with the higher the speed, especially choosing your grits, you may hurt your coating, you may damage your coating, and you may not even realize it.
Yeah.
So
I find as well you can clog pads up really fast on too high a speed, and also you dull your pads so much faster, but you're not really cutting much more material off.
You're never cutting more material. I was doing just a quick bedroom I posted the other week. It was like a pink room I turned into blue or something. I had a whole bunch of spots backlinked to do, and you can you can see it right then and there, you know, like just the difference from 3 to 5. So I was just going around checking it out, and on 3, I'm removing material faster.
That's it. Yeah.
I'm
I think it's
guaranteed I'm removing material faster.
It can just grip a lot easier, I think. It gives the paper more time to kind of grip on and cut rather than just kind of gliding over the surface and dulling itself, you know?
Yeah. Correct. I mean, you tend to, when I'm on too high of a speed, I notice that it skirts, you know, skirt across the top. Whereas when you're on a lower speed, it actually grinds. You know, where that's technically what we're looking to do, grind down the section.
Yeah, and likely the vacuum has a chance to keep up, right?
Correct.
So, on top of all that. Now, one thing I keep getting calls on, Anthony, maybe you want to address this, is a lot of people are finding they're getting swirls. And what they're saying is, I never used to get them, but I'm getting them now. And I don't get them. If I sand some PU solvent prematurely or water-based prematurely, yeah, I'll get a little chunk.
Something here or there.
That means I'm goofing up. I know right well I'm not. I shouldn't be.
You shouldn't be doing this. You're taking a risk. We've all been there. We're like, can we hit it? But no, I know what you're saying. And what I'm finding I get a lot of messages about sanding scratches and pigtails and swirls and stuff. What I find is there's a couple things that go into this. If you're seeing sanding scratches, like heavy sanding scratches through your primer coats and one or two of your top coats, odds are you never sanded out your pre-coat sanding scratches. Mm-hmm. So you probably went at it with something too heavy. You caught pad stall. You went at it too fast. You put too much pressure on it. I have a light hand when I sand. I try not to add pressure to it. I want the machine to actually do the work. Otherwise, I'll just grab a block and do it myself. So there's a reason I buy a machine, so it works, not for me to work. So for me to push down on a pad, and especially if I see a lot of people using these foam squish pads when they're trying to sand flat, when that's more of a post-coat sanding technique, or interface, I should say. You're gonna get some weird stuff go on because you're gonna get deflection in your pad. So deflection in your pad, we now also have holes in these pads for vacuum extraction. When you have a hole in your pad for vacuum extraction, you have a hook and loop backer. Your hook and loop backer can very easily push through that little tiny piece of paper. So if you're not lined up correctly and you want to push down on your sander and put your weight on this thing because you say, I need to go faster. So the more weight, I'm going to go faster, right? It's going to cut better. Yeah, you're the one that's creating the sanding scratches because your interface is going to push through your hole, and that isn't going to sand. Mm-hmm. Basically, you have a stone in that underneath your pad, and you're sanding with that stone, and that's giving you your pigtails half of the time. Or your piece of paper around those circles may get frayed, and you're not paying attention. Or your corner, that is also going to create a swirl. So if you ever look at the bottom of your pad and you start to see those edges exposed, I don't care how much meat's on that pad left in the middle. Get rid of it. Those little edges are going to fray out, and that's going to start giving you your sanding swirls. Another thing I noticed, again, if you're going to put your weight down on a machine, you better have a good idea on how much you weigh.
Yeah, I was going to just ask you that because I think a lot of people put too much pressure. They shouldn't put any pressure. So
you push down, and then your grit is actually going to create a swirl. Mm-hmm. So you're going to cut too deep. So technically, what you're honestly looking for is as little or shallow of a cut as possible for your grit. That is the actual cut of that paper.
Yeah.
Anytime you take something and you're putting pressure on, you're kind of you're kind of increasing the grit to an extent. because you're pushing that grit deeper into the surface that it needs to go.
Yeah.
So you're creating scratches that may come out in a post coat much later. You won't notice it until you put that shine on. So
here's a question for James. James, what are you using mostly on the kitchens that you're doing in the new shop?
For the most part, we are using the 6-inch orbital.
Right. On what material though?
Oh, on water-based primers and top coats.
Okay, which one?
Renner.
Okay, it doesn't matter. You can say Renner.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there have been occasions where we've used some other stuff, but mostly Renner. So
okay, so R765 would be like 760, the closest thing.
As far as I'm aware,
yeah, and the 643 is the same thing, and both sound very nicely.
Very nice. Wow, actually, I have noticed a slight difference in the primer recently. I feel like it doesn't sound quite as well as it did maybe a year or two ago.
Was there a change in any of the regulations?
I am not too sure, and it's hard to put my finger on exactly what it is necessarily. It's almost like no, it's not catalyzed. So
okay, I'm not too familiar with Renner. We don't have one in New York, apparently.
Yeah, that's
rather interesting.
But I would say, no. I mean, by all intents and purposes, they sound very well anyway. Yeah. But I have noticed it has changed slightly. But
and for abrasives, what are you using in the UK?
For the most part, we are using net abrasives.
You using the Abernets or?
Yeah, Abernets. I haven't really given it a chance to try the Festool granite nets yet, but
my question is with those net papers, again, with the interface being there and the Velcros and whatnot. Are you being mindful of your pressures?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been very much hands-off kind of guy when it comes to pressure on the sander. It's definitely, you can, and the same with the speed as well. I've never run my sander at 6. It's just not what it's really
the
meant
only
to do.
Time you see those speeds are when you're in like a valley.
Sure. I mean, but at the same time, for the most part, we're just sanding complete flat surfaces, so it's really not trying to be too obnoxious with it. Definitely not putting any undue pressure on the sanders.
Question real fast before we look through. I just want to touch on something. Your speed of sanding when you're sanding, are you going fast, or are you trying to stick with the speed of where you're at? Because I find that that people are gonna try to maybe increase the speed, right, to try to get through production faster.
Well, at the end of the day, we're sanding for a particular finish, I guess you could say. Whether it's primers, whatever, it's still a finish, right? So obviously, there are things that you literally want to tickle, right? And there's also surfaces that are just safer to not try and attack with a sander at all. And at the end of the day, all those things are because of what you want the surface to come out like, not because it's necessarily fraught with issues. For example, like there's nothing inherently wrong with running a sander down a small edge, but the chances that you're going to make it skip, are a lot higher than if you were just sanding, sort of close-ish to like a shaker panel edge, for example, right? So regardless of speed or, whatever you're trying to regulate to actually get a finish, if you're talking about sort of tough things to sand, you really would be trying to look to do the least dangerous way of doing it, because at the end of the day, you don't really want redos because of like a sanding mistake. That's kind of, in my opinion, one of the more annoying ones to fix, generally, because it takes a whole extra coat of paint, at least in that area, which is drying time, etc. And obviously in a shop environment, that's quite, it's at a premium. So, yeah, obviously, from our point of view, like the sort of speed at which we're sanding, to a point is literally just to make sure that we're not going so fast that we're not cutting at all. We're just gliding over the surface, and not so slow that you're basically pickling up into, sanding too much in one area, like, especially if you're going to run up against a corner or something like that, so.
Okay, so sanding too much in one area. Let's touch on that before we move on real quick to our last little quick concept. But sanding too much in one area, I tend to cycle my sanding. Now, do you guys do that as well? Do you know what I mean by cycle?
Are you talking about grits or?
Well, no. Okay, so it's like your grits, yeah. So what I mean by cycle is, like, I'll do an area roughly, if I'm using a 5-inch pad at 125, I'm going to do anywhere from like 6 to 9 times my size of my pad, maybe 12, depending on my surface if it's a huge area. And then I'm going to take that area, I'm going to sand for 10, 20 seconds, maybe 30, depending on what the surface looks like. And again, sanding with a purpose. I'm going to look at my surface and say, all right, that's going to look like a 10-second quick sand. Or that's going to be a 20-second or a 30, 45, whatever it is. So I'll go in, I'll sand that area. I'll do my 20 seconds, let's say. I'll wipe it back. I'll feel it. I'll inspect it. And as soon as I'm happy with the amount of time that I've sanded that area, that is where I'll continue to go around. And what I find is, as long as I'm continuously sanding in these 20, 30-second intervals, and I'm doing these spot areas, a few things comes into play with that. A, it's a mental game. So whenever we look at a big room or a project full of paneling or whatever it is, you're going to look at that paneling and you say, I have 1,000 square foot of whatever it is that needs to get processed. This is going to be a lot. I'm going to be in here all day. And depending on your mental, you may walk into it fine. An hour later, you're like, I just want to get this over. And you're going to rip through it. You're never achieving any miniature goals in life. You're never getting any satisfaction. So as you're also going through with these 20, 30-second intervals, you're receiving a satisfaction with every single moment that you've moved on, progressed, and moved into your next section. So you're now taking a large project and you're turning it into 100 small projects.
Well,
so every time
yeah.
Yes, James?
I was just going to say, it could be argued that is more or less the advantage of doing cabinet doors, is that realistically they are very much generally all one style for the most part, and you do get very much a sense as to what parts need what treatment. So, and obviously one door equals one nice dopamine hit when you finish it, right? So obviously from my point of view, it very much is like that regardless, because you have to sort of learn on each door, what profile is going to take what to get it where you need it to be. And whilst there might be exceptions in some cases because of mitigating circumstances like repairs, etc., it's all generally going to be following a pretty much a scheme. Certain edges can take certain types of sanding, and certain edges and flat surfaces will need other treatment. So yeah, it's very much like that. No, item by item by item.
Real quick before I do want to move on from this topic and hit the last one. We are at just about a half hour. I don't want this to go too long.
Sure.
So when you're doing your prep for your cabinet, you're pre-coat sanding. You're as soon as you get them, you've gotten them cleaned, they're ready to go. You're pulling out your sanders. Are you using machines or are you using blocks?
It's a combination of both, to be honest with you.
Still a combo.
Yeah. I mean,
are you heavy sanding or are you just scuff sanding on an adhesion purpose?
That does depend on the type of door. to be honest, like more so than anything else. And what's on it at the moment, like if we're repainting something, it's definitely going to be different to, you know, fresh doors, for example, and like definitely different to, for example, MDF as well. You know, it does depend on the material. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily one answer to that, but I would say for
Let's say a
better or for worse,
refinish.
you know, refinish definitely. The sanding's going to be generally heavier on that than, for example, like a fresh MDF door, for example. Yeah, definitely going to be machine sanding that, probably more so than you would on a, you know, an MDF door. Yeah, typically going to be hitting that with the 6-inch sander, at least on any large planes, and then pretty much moving down into blocking edges and things like that. So, yeah, when it comes to refinishing, it does also depend how it was finished in the past, you know. So obviously, if it's kind of like a product of a forgotten era, you know, hand painted, then, you know, like that again, it's going to be a little bit different. It depends. Like certain finishes, older finishes are different to sand. You know, they're harder. Some are ropey, some are nice and smooth. It really does depend. But I would say like a refinish, if it was a spray job done with relatively modern materials, it's going to be quite an easy sand. Not so much if you're sort of going over like old oil based or anything of that nature. But
you really need to scuff up those harder surfaces.
Oh yeah. I mean, that
Like if you're going over something and you're changing from a stain to like a stain in a clear to a pigment. I mean, personally, I kind of just block that out and scuff them.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for adhesion through my poly once I have them cleaned up.
Yeah.
Pigments I do find a little different. I agree.
Yeah, it depends. Like I say, it depends on how they've been finished more to me than what's on them sometimes. I mean, yeah, like different materials can be harder and easier to sand, and certain things can gum up, certain things don't. But again, as long as you're running your sanders at sort of like a pretty moderate speed and you're not...
You shouldn't overheat and get gum.
Yeah, exactly. Then you shouldn't be clogging up too bad, almost regardless. But, you know, we all know there's some poorly finished cabinets and some really unsuitable materials out there. So it does depend to some extent.
All right, one last topic before we wrap this up. I want to talk a little bit about pad stall. That just seems to me like a word that or a phrase that not many people are familiar with. I've mentioned it around in the forum and whatever. And people are like pad stall. Yeah. So let's just touch on that real quick. If you're sanding and your orbital isn't orbiting freely at a constant pace, you now have pad stall. You have pad stall, the dual action isn't working. You're getting a single action. So you just erased the reason you purchased a dual action sander. So as people are going, I watch some of these videos of people, and that pad's sitting still, and then it'll start to spin slow, and then it'll start to spin fast. That comes to me back down to your pressures. Now, when it comes to pad stall, simple fixes I've found is increase your speed of touch or lighten your pressure. Do you guys find you catch pad stall more in specific fashion of sanding, or do you not really catch pad stall because you're trying to stay light-handed on it and paying attention with your purpose of sanding to keep that machine moving?
Well, Robin, you might have some thoughts on this, I think.
I don't really experience it. So
no,
I'm super light. You know, I run a sander at like 3 or 4, and I just chill. So yeah. I don't get that. I'm guys that work for me.
Yeah, I'm at 3 to 4, and if I find myself catching pad stall, I'll increase very slowly until I notice it moving. And then once I'm out of that area, I'm right back down. You know, I catch a lot of pad stall when I'm sanding some of those micro cements because it's not inherently flat surfaces always. So you're going to catch high and you'll get those jitters where the sander will start to run on you a little bit. So then you want to give it a little extra. All right, I'm sanding concrete. I'm not worried about sanding swirls. Yeah. But when if I catch any if I'm doing paint and I catch a little pad stall on a situation, I'm just gonna roll through that area to touch faster to eliminate it, and I'm gonna try to lighten my pressures.
I do find the two go hand in hand in some way though, because if you go faster, you typically can't really do that with so much pressure on the pad anyway. I mean, I'm always trying to sort of, I think of a sander almost like a spray gun. You know, you're always better off going a little bit faster and then giving it another pass than you are to slow down and try and cram as much into one small area as you can.
Over grind or over apply.
I mean, you know, whereas with a sander, so the same could be said as like as much as giving it a couple of swipes to me is better than doing it twice as hard, and you do get a better sense for what you're taking off the surface if you do that as well. And so I guess, you know, because of trying to stick to that methodology, I personally don't really suffer with it pad stall, but I do think having a decent sander that can keep up also does help. So
tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just a couple hours ago, I was doing a little micro cement. I'm redoing a bathroom here at the house. And when I do the micro cements, I like the rotary geared because they're just stronger. And if they get dust in them, I'm not worried about that thing breaking. Because the gears are just going to blow out whatever's in it. I've found that with my rotary gears, I wind up having to sand a lot. Like I'm on 5 in order to not catch pad stall in a lot of my application. Whereas with the little Rupes, that it literally at the same exact spot, I'm at 3.5. So it's really an interesting thing, and I don't catch pad stall. So it really is interesting as when you go from machine to machine as to where you really need to be in surface to surface, changing your machines and doing all that, you're going to experience something a little different. So yeah, on this machine, you may need a little more with this application. And on that machine, you may need a little less on that similar application.
Well, I think there is always a learning curve with a new sander, though. I think that's something that people overlook a little bit, is once you've actually had a sander for a while and you know what to expect from it at certain speeds with certain grits, it becomes way less of a guessing game. You know, you just kind of become in tune with how fast you have to move, etc. But again, it depends also on what you're sanding as well. So I think to some extent, it's almost something that you can't necessarily come up with a template for, but you can definitely quickly develop a preference for one sander over another because of maybe the way it's geared or whatever.
Or the way it feels.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, definitely.
I mean, the ergonomics of a sander are some of the most dramatic things you're ever going to notice.
Oh, yeah.
That's electric sanders, though. Like with my Dynabrade or Merca or Rupes, the air sanders, pneumatic sanders, I never know where I'm at. It's the feeling, right? Because it's got a little thing underneath. You don't know what it is.
It's tiny.
Yeah, you're just flicking it around with your finger till it feels about right. You know,
I literally ran the Rupes, the Scorpio 3s with my pinky like this.
Yeah,
on a vertical.
Yeah, no, it's a different thing than the electric sander. I prefer air sanders.
Same,
by far.
Same.
But the electrics are so close now. It's absolutely amazing. The first time I ever tried a Merca, the electric was the one with the extension motor and the long cable that hooked up the transformer. Yeah, that thing it broke down like every 2-3 months, but it was ingenious, the concept. So eventually someone stole it, and I was happy. That was a happy day. but I love sand.
Hold on. That might have been the first time I've ever heard somebody say they were happy they had a sander stolen from them.
Oh man, that transformer was replaced 3 times. The cable was replaced 4 times. But the idea was ingenious, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciated it, but after a year and a bit, I was like, bye-bye.
I had enough of you.
Yeah,
Wow.
and they came out with
I'm gonna switch to the Home Depot DeWalt next.
yeah. No, they improved the sander, so and like I said, I really like Merca. I like them all. Like
I like the way the Merca feels in my hand.
Some people are like, oh, it's got to be Surf Prep, or oh, it's got to be Festool, or oh, it's got to be Merca, and I'm like, well, I have Festool and I have Merca, I have Rupes, I have all lots Dynabraid, and everyone has its advantage and disadvantage.
Yeah,
it's like, but I like most of them.
Let's end it on that note, because that's a great note, and let's think of this, because anytime I hear multiple different types of manufacturers or tools or whatever it may be, and people say this company, that company, I like this one, I prefer that one, I prefer this. A lot of the times I've noticed that these people, they haven't tried them all.
Yeah.
And they're going to say that this is the best side, this is the best, this is the best, this is the best. Well, a great friend of all of ours, Chade Turner, he has a absolutely tremendous motto to that, or saying, however you want to call it. And pretty much what it is the best to you is the best you know.
Yeah. Always.
So unless you've honestly given everything a fair shot, a fair try, you really can't say that this is the best, that's the best, the next thing's the best. You can say that this is what I know, and this is what I feel.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, at the same time, I have a very big issue with people saying that this is the best sander, this is the best sprayer.
I avoid the word "the best" as much as possible. It's like
game changer.
Don't say game changing. It's the best.
100%, guys. Yeah, listen, it's been absolutely a great time. I love talking with you guys every single chance we get. I mean, I think we put 2 hours in before we even stepped into this.
Yeah.
So
we just got to make sure we can keep our schedule somewhat aligned so that we can keep pumping episodes out. So
listen, I would love to sit down every other week, or at bare minimum, and at least get one out. A quick half hour, 45-minute, and we'll just continue forward. And like I said, we're just gonna start with some topics, and then expand on them. So today is sanding, tomorrow maybe whatever. But if you guys in the forum, we'll put up a post. If you guys want to see a specific have us talk about a specific topic, have us talk about a specific anything, just put down the topic, whatever it is, send one of us a DM or put it in the post, and we'll be sure to put it down on the list and get to it, and then expand out from there.
I've tried to get some feedback from a few people as to maybe some topics people wanted to hear about, but it's like if people just mention it, I guarantee you it's going to pop up at some point, because ideas are hard to come by. So
Oh, 100%. And listen, at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is there's only so many of us, and we only have so many issues that we come across, right? We all have our own little issue. So what it comes down to, and just by listening to the three of us today, it seems like the three of us pretty much have the same concept. So I'm assuming that the three of us tend to come across similar issues. If we, the issues were there at all. So as you guys come across specific issues to yourself, just drop us a DM or make a post about it and say, can we go over in a podcast? Listen, that's an absolute godsend. This is why we're doing this. This is 100%. Why we're here. I'm not doing it for my fun. I can be hanging with my kids and playing with my dog right now.
All right, you're making us feel bad now.
Yeah, I have to go and play with my dogs right now. So
Anyway, guys, it's been beautiful. Enjoy. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. and I'll talk to you guys all soon.
All right.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Ciao.